Canadian history is boring. Or is it? Today, we look at that statement through the eyes of the great Canadian notebook and its author, Dennis Rimmer. Dennis, thanks for stopping by.
Дякую.
Oh, дякую, he says. Are we doing this in Ukrainian or English?
I only know one word in Ukrainian, and
Okay.
you've got it, so that's it. It'll be English.
Perfect. I just wanted to check because I didn't prepare questions in Ukrainian. I'm sure we could come up with some. But interesting that you note that because it's kind of very Canadian to just say thank you in a different language. And that's kind of the impetus of this book, I'm thinking, is to look back at Canada and how we got here. What spurred you to write such a book?
Anger. I was angry all my life. I worked in media, as are you, and I didn't like the attitude of my coworkers who despised anything Canadian. A TV show, terrible, it's Canadian. Movies, terrible, they're Canadian. Records, terrible, we don't put that stuff on. We're forced to, but we don't like it. We don't want to do it. And it just over the years got to me that, hey, there's something wrong here. We don't have to be something that other people want us to be. We don't have to look at ourselves as being better than another country because we're not what they are. We should celebrate what we are. And we're not perfect. Everybody knows that. Lord, do we have problems like you wouldn't believe?
Yeah.
You know, and we got to not pat ourselves on the back all the time, but how pompously accepting we are when we really aren't. You know, we're talking about, we were boycotting South African wines years ago because of apartheid. Well, we got it in our backyard, but we don't talk about that because we're great Canadians. So I wanted to change the focus a bit and get us to talk about the good things we do. Sure, we have problems, we know that, but let's look back a bit to see all the fun stuff that goes on. And I'm no expert, I'm no, you know.
Just a guy
who puts some stuff together.
Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So born out of an anger and, you know, an interesting perspective, one I think a lot of people probably sitting at home nodding their heads saying, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. What are some of the coolest stories or some of the most interesting nuggets that, that you've put into the book?
My favorite is the peculiar puzzle of Mr. Smith, I call it. And there was this guy in a prisoner of war camp, I guess. And well, he ended up in England after the First World War. He was wearing a German army uniform, but he couldn't speak German. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know his name. He didn't know anything. A guard at the, I guess I'll call it a camp, I don't know what it was, internment center, where he was after the war. A guy heard him talking and said, he's got a Canadian accent. Really? And we're going, okay, because we all think, way back then anyway, everything was British in English Canada. Quebec's a different story. I don't go there.
No,
it's a different place. So, you know, I love it, but
But he has this Canadian accent.
Yep, his Canadian accent. So he got, not deported, repatriated, I guess is the word, back to Canada. Wow. But nobody could find out his identity or anything like that. So he was in a, well, they used to call mental home, is what they called them in the old days. And finally, about in the mid-30s, 1933 or so, some reporters for the Toronto Star, I think it was, sort of investigated this and found out he was a guy from Baltimore, Maryland, and how he ended up in Europe in the First World War, rather, in a German uniform and then ended up back in Canada because of his accent is still a mystery. So that was one of my favorite stories.
There you go. Well, it's just probably one of, I'm sure, a handful of little stories. The book is available where?
Everywhere. McNally Robinson, we just did a signing on Saturday. SAS Made Products on 8th Street there. In Yorkton, at Coles, Prince Albert, at Coles. We're at Coles Indigo in chapters pretty much throughout the province. And we're from like Langley and Abbotsford, BC to St. John, New Brunswick.
You got her. Hey, well, that's what makes sense. The great Canadian notebook. Dennis Rimmer, thanks for a couple of minutes.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You betcha.